It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. I'm trying to get this video done before I do Twitch. Sorry, Twitch was so late yesterday. This is going to deal with some delicate stuff, and I want to make sure, because I know every single word of mine is going to be watched. But Boss Fight Episode 4 is out. Yay. I am going to talk about that and some stuff. This show, I'm happy with it. It was hard to get done, man, for numerous reasons. But I want to talk, wrap up the loot box thing. That won't take much time. Deal with one Wellness Wednesday response that really kicked me in the feels. So I wanted to give a little bit of validation there to the person who said it, because sometimes that's all that's required. And then get on to the Boss Fight 4 stuff, because there are stories there. So if you like this sort of content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. The patrons played a very important role in Boss Fight Episode 4, as you will discover in a bit. So the way I'm going to close out the whole loot box discussion is to just say the discussion that ensued in the comments, the sum of its parts was worth far more than any particular comment. The fact that the discussion could be had, and there were a lot of people suggesting different hybrid ideas of, like, we'll still have loot boxes for people who like them, but also have a la carte sales in a store and have you be able to earn it with in-game credits that you earn, as well as real money you can put in, stuff like that. We don't have any right answers right now on in-app purchases. We know the wrong ones right now, which is this predatory, manipulative loot box sales practices. And I'm open to the idea that there will be a point where it's not so in your face. It's not pushing the loot boxes on people through these timed fear of missing out, driven buy now or lose. I'm open to maybe there is a solution. We're going to have to try things and figure it out. But the point is, we are trying here, right? How come we, a bunch of half shitlords, can have a productive conversation about this in a way that the industry, the big money parts in the industry can't? They should know more about it. They should. And if you're really big on maximizing profits, video games are the wrong media for you anyway, because video game margins are already smaller than film and television. So, I don't know, maybe the industry needs a change in executive. We need more people who actually came up in video games instead of selling bleach in cars and, being in the Trump administration. Not there's anything wrong with being a Trump administration. That just has nothing to do about video games. Except for maybe getting good at trolling. But you know what I mean. Maybe there just isn't enough institutional knowledge at the upper echelons. Or maybe just the executives aren't listening to the developers. Epic Games, the stuff going on between Epic and Apple and all that stuff right now, it's grandstanding, and that's part of it, but at least Epic seems to give a shit in its own way. So, I give them credit for that with Fortnite. They're being less evil, and I think we should reward that stuff, and I think we should give kudos and not let perfect be the enemy of good. At least they're trying. And this is what I like about games that you don't get in film and television. Trust me, executives in film and television do not care about the ethics of your distribution model or who gets hurt along the way, which is why Me Too became such a huge thing. And it's not over yet. There's still stuff to come. But at least in this industry, people still give a shit, and people actually have ideas about how to do better. We could be doing so much better, but I think it's very important to sort of take a pulse when there is productive discussion. Because let's face it, video games don't exactly have the reputation for being able to discuss things like grown-ups. But if you go through and read the comments on those loot box videos, there is a ton of exactly that. And that, I think, is a real success. So thank you guys for that. So let's move on from that to the Wellness Wednesday comment, the kick me in the feels. And I have to be very, very careful about not going off on a really long tangent on this one because I want to get to the boss fight stuff. But here's the comment from a guy named it's Leet. So I apologize if I mispronounced, but I think it's formality. Form 4 Lee 7Y. Formality in my world. This was about why hurt people and being able to talk about your feelings and giving people the opportunity to have your back. This was what the response was to this. Formality says, on the part about letting people that have your back know what you're feeling or going through, it can be very tricky. I've dealt with disabilities my whole life, and letting some people know that should have your back can teach you to keep it to yourself and guard it because not doing so made things worse. I've had it backfire with family, school officials, others in various forms of power, and it made me become so guarded that when I got in a bad auto accident, I had trouble conveying how much pain I was in. I wouldn't even show a lot of it in my face because I got used to it. And I just saw that. It's like, man, I've been there. And that's basically where I got my worldview of if something bothers me, I'm going to say so. And if something hurts me, I'm going to say so. And if somebody makes it clear they don't give a shit, bye. Like, what's that? Later, Felicia, or bye, Felicia, or something like that. I don't even know where that's from. I just know it's a meme. But, you know, like, that's it. I give you a chance to be a good person and you're an asshole. Dead to me. Because I hear you. Formality. I know how much that hurts. I know how much it's a kick in the gut. One person on that named the feeling like your chest was going to explode, named that pain Xeno, like the xenomorph. I thought that was very clever. So that's just an aside. But like, you know, this, you thought they'd have your back. They kicked you in the gut. Yeah, that's real. You did everything right there, man. The other people did everything wrong. And we need a collective discussion about the people around people with disabilities and actually listening to people with disabilities as individuals with individual needs and desires and limits and all that stuff. And my big concern with like all this stuff with identity politics and critical theory and all that stuff and, you know, men do this and women do that and black people do this and white people do this and then there's whiteness and blackness and then there's Hispanic and Latinx, which you know how I feel about that, and so on and so forth. That individuality is gone, and it can't be, because if you think you know what a person needs before you ask them, you're going to come across as condescending. If you think you know what a person is thinking just because they check a particular box, you're going to come across as a bigot, you know? And I get that for many, many, many years, certain social rules were saddled with an expectation of mind reading. But when you have somebody whose life has veered from the way it was supposed to go, and that's a big challenge with people living with a disability. You know, once that happens, you're off book, right? You can't make those predictions. You shouldn't to begin with. There is a huge difference between going, what do you want to do here? Or I understand there may be a sensitivity here. What do you really want to do? And I tend to say no wrong answers, or I am really asking, this isn't a platitude, because even that question can be a trap when it's asked in bad faith. But I cannot stand it when I hear, well, men are just like this, because I used to get, well, you're a girl. And it's like, I'm a what? Like, what does that mean? And unfortunately, there's been so many very special episodes devoted to people with disabilities that some people think, they see one person in the media and that maudlin after school special take on a particular issue is the way it is in the real world. And it just can't be, right? Like one person with a particular character point can't represent everybody with that identifier, but people treat it like it does, and it's frustrating. And then add the disability element where people either treat you like you're sick when you just can't go upstairs. Like, apparently a big thing with people who use wheelchairs is people talk to them like they're stupid or deaf just because their legs don't work. I don't get that at all, but that apparently happens. It's like, and for every condition, there's something like that. I know I get treated as, I hate getting treated like fragile. This may not surprise you. When people use the word fragile, I'm just like, my first thought is like, no, YouTube will flag me if I say what that makes me think, because YouTube manual reviewers cannot tell the difference between this is what I think versus this is what I'm actually going to do. So we'll leave that there. But this is to say, formality, this is me having your back about people not having your back. That was bullshit. And I hope you keep trying. I understand why it's hard. And I understand why it's so disappointing when it doesn't work. But the failure is the other people's, not yours. You did great. Okay? Hopefully that helps. Like I said, that one just in the feels. And I think we'll have to do more on that topic about how to really have someone's back on Wellness Wednesdays. Because, in the feels. So let's move on to Boss Fight. We've got enough time to talk about Boss Fight. This episode of Boss Fight, I'm very proud of it. I think it's funny. Oh Lord, the stress getting this thing out. And it's the reality of, a long-term, high-concept creative project that takes a long time to get made. Things happen, and it shifts perspective. The scripts, broad strokes, for these boss fight episodes, the basics of the character creations, everything like that, they were done over a year ago. And because of the process the show got made, a lot of people don't seem to realize now that there were 4 plot twists that were voted on by Kickstarter backers. And then the bios for all the main characters except Beelzebub. There was one other, and I'm blanking on it now, but that's just because they were already written. But they were written by backers who paid to be part of the $75 writing tier. They wrote the backstories. And I was just like, well, let's massage it. We'll work it. But for the vast majority, I just took what was there. I took what they gave me and came up with a character based on that. And we even did little things of, which outfit do you like? Which wig do you like? Like, that was all a collaborative effort. And then I started making it. So the character concepts and basically who and what they were locked in. And then Anita Sarkeesian took that shot at me a few weeks back. And it's like, because I dared to say, hey, get your followers to stop bullying people like me. And cool chick okay with sexism, dining out on her, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, I knew it was in the show because I just edited it. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. And so what I did there, this is what I do with patrons. It's like, hey, guys, here's a clip from episode 4. So if they try to claim that that was a clapback, it wasn't. It pre-existed. But I know some people are going to still see it, even though that's not true. Nothing I can do about it. Okay, I thought enough time had gone by, but then the Jordan Peterson Red Skull thing happened on Tuesday. And I was like, fuck. And this is tricky because I've been on both sides of this, right? I'm a creator that clearly uses parody and satire in comedy. I'm also a person who has been on the receiving end of people basically committing defamation against me and labeling it parody or satire just to get around defamation laws, right? Oh no, it's satire. Like really nasty stuff. So I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of it too. And the Zarkazan character was the one I struggled with the most. Because I didn't want to just take cheap shots at someone who she and her followers have not been terribly nice to me for years now. I didn't want that. She's a human being. This is supposed to be fun, not mean. And so I finally thread the needle because it was lying right there, right? When you've got like the Social Justice League and you've got Social Justice Warrior, and the writers came up with this idea of him having like this really bad relationship in his past and that he lost when he transitioned and all that stuff, which I thought was actually good character depth. But, you know, it was a Social Justice League. They're all obnoxious in some way, shape, or form. There's, you know, we got to show where Social Justice Warrior came from. So then when he starts evolving, now that he's Princess Sparkle Muffin's sidekick, it's more of a victory, right? Make the character not quite so one-dimensional. And so what I came up with was a character who is not fantasy realm RPG Anita Sarkeesian. She's an Anita Sarkeesian fan who strips the context out of quotes so that she can control and gaslight other people. I made that separation so that I can live with that. I can live with myself. I know I wasn't being mean. But I know some people will not believe that. They will run with their own narrative because they already don't like me and they have a pre-existing narrative, and it just benefits them to make me look like shit, so they're going to make up stories. Nothing I can do, right? And I was really, really bothered by the reaction to the Jordan Peterson Red Skull thing, because I'm like, shit, everybody's going to be all whipped up about this, and my big concern was it's the other side, right? So now, great. Now it's happening to someone on the left. Right? As a creator, you can't win when that stuff happens. Could I have pulled the episode? Sure, but it's already been so delayed. Sometimes you just gotta push it out there, right? Gotta just drop that kid off at the pool. And let the chips fall where they may. And having been in situations where people have done things like put my head on a llama and done a really mocking voice about me and insisted that was parody, and, you know, people writing things that I was an ex-stripper who was raped by my uncle and called that parody, and all these other stuff. I know that just because something is intended to be funny from one group does not mean the person it's inspired by is going to find it funny. There's a difference between laughing with and laughing at, right? That still doesn't mean that parody and satire don't have their place even when it's scathing, right? And these are not easy yes, no answers. There's a lot of nuance in this stuff, right? Does the parody leverage stereotypes? That's a big question, right? Because then it's not a parody of an individual person. Then it's leveraging racist and sexist stereotypes. And again, I wanted to be very careful with the sorceress character because she is a female bully. The voice is based on Kim Kardashian. Is that me saying Kim Kardashian is a female bully? No. You're just establishing the tropes, ironically, that the characters are invoking for their own kind of evil ends. She also just sounds like all the teachers' pets in the annoying gender studies courses I was at in university, right? Like they all had that vocal fry, which really hurts to do. But that's why I was like, what? When people were getting so, they're calling Jordan Peterson a Nazi, like, because of the Red Skull? I mean, okay, full disclosure, a comic book character is named after me in the Rebirth Secret 6 books. Gail Simone did tell me she was going to use my name for a lesbian stripper. She didn't tell me that the character was going to be passed around as like a polyamorous fuck buddy for a bunch of the villains. Like, I didn't know about that, but I'm like, okay, whatever. Character's dumb as a box of rocks. I'm not, kind of looks like me, kind of. Fine, great, cool. I made an impact, right? People didn't seem to see this in the same way. And this is what had me so, because I saw it, I'm like, hey, cool. That's kind of a marker of Jordan Peterson's cultural relevance, that he makes it into a Captain America comic, right? That's how I took it. Because anytime they're talking about you, it's good. But the reactivity and the jumping to, they're calling him a Nazi, I was like, what? Huh? Where? Because I'm old school Captain America continuity, right? I still remember the stories where Red Skull was going off, bumping off Hitler's lieutenants and stealing Nazi tech. Like, it was Joe Simon and Jack Kirby going, ha ha, Nazis, even our villains hate you. Someone explained to me that nuance is lost in the movies. I'm like, oh, Jesus. Like, is everybody this uptight? Is everyone this uptight here? And yes, of course, there were still people going, no, it's a bad look for him. He shouldn't. And then I think back to the Taylor Swift thing where she reacted to the knock at her dating life that I needed explained to me, because I thought, like, yeah, this is kind of a cheap shot. Somebody had to explain to me that in that show, it was a mark of a teenager being a little shit, taking a cheap shot at her mom. All right, in that context, I understand it better. Okay, I didn't think teenagers went there anymore, but what do I know? Sure, okay. And that's another case where Taylor Swift being upset about the way she's referenced isn't going to stop people from referencing her that way. If you're high profile enough to be part of the cultural zeitgeist, it does come with the territory. I mean, the greatest of all time in this regard. I don't know if some of you are too young to remember this, but there was a rumor that Richard Gere went to the hospital with a gerbil shoved up his butt. There is no truth to this at all, but it was the Richard Gere gerbil just became this meme. And can you imagine being that guy? Like, can you imagine that? And like back in that day, at least Richard Gere could cry into the money that comes with being an A-list actor, right? Nowadays, it's not like that. Nowadays, YouTubers like me who are still struggling to make it get by financially have to deal with the same crap. It's insane. And that doesn't mean we stop doing parody, right? That doesn't mean we stop doing jokes. That doesn't mean we stop, examining culture and examining cultural tropes and using those shorthands, recognizing that there is the real living, breathing human being who is probably a very nice person once you get to know them. And then there is their public image, and they're not the same thing. And it is a balance. It is a real challenge to recognize that's a human being, recognize they might not be very happy about what you're doing, finding a way to justify it to yourself that you're not acting with malice, and then be prepared to people to just say whatever they're going to say about you anyway. And I think that's what is missing in all this hysteria, right? We could dissect that Red Skull panel till the cows come home. It's not going to persuade anybody because the narratives are fixed in people's heads, right? I actually went and Googled and started trying to figure out if Jordan Peterson had actually ever said anything about a feminist trap, because that was one of the things. No, he never said anything of the kind. So that wasn't him. And I mean, Karl Lueger, the other reference in that panel, like Karl Lueger was an Austrian prince that possibly like inspired some of Adolf Hitler's ideas. Most people don't know that. They probably thought they meant Karl Lagerfeld or something like that. But obviously, Jordan Peterson does not going around invoking Karl Lueger. So the truth is that Red Skull panel was pulling from a bunch of different things, creating an amalgam the same way I did with Zarkazan, but people seized on the one piece they recognized, and it became all about that. And I was like, and I admit it was really disheartening to see a bunch of people demanding that creators not engage in what's going on when they write popular art, when they do entertainment. That's disturbing. And, because for instance, if it wasn't for the Taylor Swift thing and me going, yeah, I understand why she really didn't like that at all. And then somebody say, well, the context was stripped out of it. I'm like, oh, okay. Like apparently the Red Skull context is stripped out of it too. Apparently it's a whole Marvel crossover where, left-wing people are taking it on the chin too in other books. It's this whole, crossover thing. That's the problem with comic books right now, is the crossovers get so massive that nobody can afford in time or treasure to read everything. So things that end up getting distilled into one panel. But the reality is we all have to take those moments that sting so that we have the freedom to explore ideas in mediums where you have to get to the point quickly, right? I mean, in gaming case, everybody's like, I'm so sick of Anita Sarkeesian. One person actually said, what was the comic? I'm really tired of hearing about Sarkeesian, but you're funny. That overcomes the pain. It's like, okay, thank you. The problem is there's nobody else. Gaming hasn't cultivated that kind of critic. Anybody else female who has made the impact that she has. That's a failure on gaming's part. That's a failure of the enthusiast press to cultivate other voices. That's not Anita Sarkeesian's fault. I think she takes more crap than she deserves because of that, even though she's been super nasty and below the belt to me. People like Jordan Peterson, people like Anita Sarkeesian, they don't create themselves. That is a system and that is a process. That is a culture. We live in a society, right? You only have so much control over what your public image ends up being. You just have to roll with it. You know, do I like the fact that people are going around who are influential saying I'm okay with sexism? No, I really don't like it because it's not true, but what can I do about it? Nothing. You know, I just keep doing my thing and making my stuff and know that you don't have to convince everybody all of the time. You just have to convince enough people some of the time. And the only way to do that is to play to your strengths and not constantly be afraid of your weaknesses. And I'm talking about this because it was something that was in the news, but it was something where that's why I didn't do Twitch Tuesday. People who knew me were taking cracks at me over that and over the Red Skull thing. And I'm like telling me I hate men and this, and I'm like, I can't, because if it's this crazy, I got to conserve my strength. You know, I got the vapors right now and it's only beginning. And, you know, to be clear, do I think Jordan Peterson is a Nazi? Absolutely not. That's stupid. That's stupid. I don't know who started that. If I'd heard that before, I'd forgotten it. That's dumb, right? The guy has some messed up views on trans people. And, you know, I don't think he gives fair credit. Yeah, you know what? I don't think he says anything terribly original. Therefore, I don't think he's big bad Mr. Dangerous, right? That's what I think about Jordan Peterson. I don't know how anybody would think Jordan Peterson is a Nazi based on a Red Skull comic, because you'd have to know who he was to make that connection, because I never actually used his name, right? Same way people would, like, I actually said I credited the source because I realized if I'm verbatim quoting somebody, I can't include that in the show as original dialogue. So I actually did a citation in character voice, had SJW like defending Anita Sarkeesian. I don't know how much kinder I could have been there. And yet there were still comments going exactly where I didn't want it to go. There's nothing you can do about it. That's the reality of creating fiction. Not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. Some people are going to hate you for it. That is something, if you're a creator of anything, you just have to make your peace with. And I thought this was a good opportunity to talk about that from the inside. I think all you can ask for with creators who engage in satire is that they preserve the humanity of the subject, of the person they're invoking for parody or, you know, metaphor or whatever. That you recognize this is a human being. Have fun with, not make fun of. Sometimes that's in the eye of the beholder, right? So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you enjoyed Boss Fight episode 4. One more left. And if you want to hear more about that, because I am going to need help, Serenity Sunflowers chatters are coming back in episode 5. So if you want to be a part of that, because these are patrons, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.